9:59. You good? Yeah. All right, it's 9:59.
Okay, Susan. Were you ever late for school? That's awesome. That's not a bad thing.
It was engendered by terror, though.
That's
Oh my God, yeah. Compulsive. Yeah,
not good.
yeah. All sorts of judgment associated with not being prompt. Good morning. It is 10 a.m. on Thursday, December 14th. Happens to be my daughter's 25th birthday. And I am calling to order this meeting of the Public Safety and Justice Committee. Let's begin with a roll call.
Chairperson Chavez. Chairperson Ellenberg.
I'm here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have speakers for public comment today? This is the portion of the agenda set aside for members of the public wishing to address this committee on matters not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the Public Safety and Justice Committee.
I have no speakers in person, but I do have one speaker on Zoom.
All right. Let me just note that if anyone else on Zoom wishes to speak, now's the time to raise your virtual hand. The queue will close when the first speaker begins speaking.
All right, thank you. Paul Soto, we've asked you to unmute.
Good morning, members of the committee. Paul Soto from a Horseshoe. I was disappointed yesterday when the issue of tasers was not only was it tabled date, but there was a violation to the public's interest. And here was the violation: is that the sheriff's department was actually being when they look that their position is strengthened. That was not the role. That was our. It wasn't the role of any board of supervisor member to instruct them in that way. There was a violation there of ethics, and I would go so far as a violation of the law, because you literally were signaling to them. I could play it back for you, or I suggest you go ahead and play it back yourself, because what you did, people are, and you were giving and possibly putting into of a sadist a weapon that he can now use to torture a vulnerable citizen in his charge, and you put that in his hand. So you're kind of playing around with this issue, and it's that serious. I don't know if any of you've been tased, but I have. I know the power, what that weapon can do. And it has already been very clearly articulated by the medical profession of its effects on people. And what will happen is that person dies, and you know what they're using now to just, oh, well, there was a pre-existing condition that this person had and was already experiencing, and that's what killed him. It was his lifestyle. He was a dope fiend anyway. He had high blood pressure, he had high cholesterol, he had diabetes. So his life was really not worth that much anyway. He was already destroying it. And so the taser just kind of exacerbated already these pre-existing conditions. This is the kind of rationale that the county executive would come up with. I already know Mr. Williams would do that, because he already paid $7 million in hush money to quiet in a no-fault agreement in order to keep the family of Juan Nunez quiet. This is why I am very disappointed and will actually challenge the lawfulness of what was done yesterday.
And this concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much. Our next item is to approve the consent calendar. I have no recommended changes, but I do want to offer a change to the regular agenda, which is simply to hear item 4 after item 8. Because the district attorney's office requested that change because they are unable to present sooner. Yes.
I would move approval with just one request, and that is on item 13. I do just want to acknowledge that the work's been moving forward. It's been a little slow, and
Can I
but
just share for the public that item 13 is the Sheriff's Office Gender Responsive Work in Custody?
Right, and let me just say, when I say slow, I think it's gone from slow to being more methodical, so I think that's actually a good thing. My one request would be if the staff could just give us a quick off agenda that just explains what the outreach is looking like with all the different partners, you know, the Office of Women's Policy, our nonprofit partners, the CDOC committee, and mostly because there's been a lot of interest in being kept apprised, and I would just be interested in knowing who we're talking to. Thank you, and thank you for the work.
Thank you. Do we have any public speakers on the consent?
Yes, we have one on Zoom.
All right. Please invite that speaker.
Paul Soto, we've asked you to unmute.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. One of the things that I'd like to offer this committee is, you know, it was, I would have preferred learning this in some other way, but I did learn it. And you do need to know this, is that the city of San Jose had me arrested for being in a public library a couple of weeks ago. I did 5 days in jail. No charges filed because I didn't commit a crime. They literally just are weaponizing the police department to do their dirty work of Nora Freeman and the people that are inside the government of San Jose. And we all know why. It has something to do with some politician over there in Gilroy. That aside, when you go to, and because this didn't exist and this came out of this committee, when you go into the jail now, right when you're getting released, there is a medical professional right there at the desk. If you have medications and you were receiving any kind of medication in there, and this is unprecedented, this had never, ever, ever happened in my entire experience there at Elmwood. When you are being released now, there's a medical professional right there. They are instructing you, here's your paper. They give you the medical paper that they were using in order to treat you while you were there, any medical condition that you have. They explain to you, this is what this is. Get this, take this here. You'll be able to get 30 days of medication, for this particular thing. Here's it's highlighted, the address and everything. And that came out of the advocacy from this committee. So from a practical and one that's based on empirically rather than just rhetorically. Thank you for that, because that was something that was never done. And you need to know that the policies here are actually being extended from the community. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much.
I'll move approval.
We have motion by Chavez, second by Ellenberg. Let's vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez?
Yes.
Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Since we are moving item 4 to the end of the regular agenda, we'll begin with item 5, which is AB 109 Implementation Report. Good morning. Ready when you are. Just be sure to please turn your mics on and introduce yourselves first.
Hello. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Saroj Tital. I am Senior Research and Evaluation Specialist in the Research and Development Unit at Probation.
And good morning. My name is Darren Story. I'm a division manager here at the Probation Department and currently assigned for the AB 109 supervision function.
And today we will be presenting the recidivism snapshot for 2018 and 2021 for our AB 109 clients. CDCR publishes a comprehensive report of recidivism outcomes for clients released everywhere to different states. Those reports can be found in their dashboards in their website. Today we present the recidivism outcomes for AB 109 clients released to Santa Clara County under both the post-release community supervision or PRCS and mandatory supervision or MS clients for two cohorts, one those released in fiscal year 2018 and one those released in fiscal year 2021. In 2018, there were 545 clients released under PRCS and 244 clients released under MS. And in 2021, there were 376 clients released under PRCS and 99 clients released under mandatory supervision. So this slide shows the demographics of the 2021 cohorts. So demographics of 2018 cohorts are relatively similar, so we have relegated those to slides after question if someone's interested. Our clients are predominantly male, as you can see on the bottom right chart. Majority of them are Hispanic, and Blacks and Hispanic continue to be disproportionately represented in our population. The top chart shows the housing status, top three housing status of our clients. Permanent housing, in custody, and homelessness round out the top three. The biggest takeaway from this top chart is that homelessness continues to be a major issue in our county.
And just a quick note on the in-custody component for the housing status, that is at the time of their termination of supervision. So if they were serving a violation of probation sentence, for example, that would lead to them being in custody for that. So a quick note on that.
Summary of main findings of this report. So PRCS clients released to Santa Clara County in 2018 had a significantly lower two-year recidivism rates compared to statewide releases. For both PRCS and MS clients released to Santa Clara County, the two-year recidivism rates have declined from 2018 to 2021. We also find a strong relationship between our case assessment risk level and two-year recidivism rates. In other words, high-risk level clients are more likely to commit or recidivate. For majority of both men and women, fall under casework control and limit setting strategies. So those are the summary of our main findings. The graph here shows the recidivism rates of PRCS and MS clients in Santa Clara County for 2018 and 2021. As you can see, the recidivism rate of PRCS clients declined from, was that 43? To 38 to 26%. And for MS clients, it declined from 41 to 35%. The statewide recidivism rate for 2018 for PRCS clients is 45%. So we're doing better. The graphs here show the time to rearrest and time to conviction from the days days from supervision started to their first arrest and first conviction. For MS clients, days to rearrest have increased significantly, meaning the frequency of arrest have declined, which is a positive outcome. And for PRCS clients, the days to rearrest have declined slightly, however, this is not statistically significant. For conviction, days to conviction for both PRCS and MS clients increased significantly, although there were rules and procedural changes in conviction between 2018 and 2021, so that might be driving the result. The offense category for 2018 are the top three are drug, alcohol-related offense, other crimes and property crimes. So some examples of other crimes include driving with suspended license, or resisting or delaying the peace officers, providing false information for peace officers, reckless driving, etc. For 2021, other crimes, property crimes, and other crimes against people round out the top 3. So some example of other crimes against people include battery to someone or their domestic partner. I think those, violation of protective order, some examples. So the graphs here show the supervision strategy for men for 2018 and 2021. As you can see, majority of them fall under either casework control or limit setting strategy for both PRCS and MS population for both fiscal year 2018 and 2021. Similarly, for women, majority fall under casework control and limit setting for both PRCS and MS clients for both years. The MS clients in 2021 actually have this selective intervention treatment as their second largest category, but majority overall still fall under the casework control and limit setting strategy. Finally, we look at the criminogenic needs for men and women in 2021 and 2018. So criminogenic needs from between 2018 and 2021 remain relatively similar, with substance abuse, vocational inadequacy, and basic living needs being very important criminogenic needs. As you can see, over 70% of PRCS, over 70% of our clients have alcohol and/or drug-related issues. Almost half of our clients, the male clients, have vocational inadequacy, and over a quarter of our clients have basic living needs. Similarly, for female clients, almost all female clients have substance abuse issues, like 88% for PRCS and 93% for MS clients. 31% of PRCS clients have vocational inadequacy, and half of MS female clients have vocational inadequacy, and almost a quarter of our clients have basic living needs. With that, we conclude our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for the report. I'm going to first look to members of the public for any comments in chambers or on Zoom.
One moment, my screen disappeared. There we go. We do have one person on Zoom.
All right. Let's hear our speaker, please.
All right, Paul, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. First of all, I'd like to thank Justice Anthony Kennedy for casting the 5th vote that created the realignment. He was the one vote that was 4-4, and he was the one that cast the vote, and he is also the one that wrote the position in Plata versus Brown, which is the court precedent that set in motion AB 109. And so I'd like to thank him, first of all. Secondly, is that we can, as a county, congratulate ourselves because we're doing excellent work at maintaining a consistent, not only accomplishing it, but maintaining a consistent progress in keeping citizens out of that stink hole, out of that prison, out of that jail. And the other thing is, and so every metric, because I read this report, and every metric was very positive. I have a critique, and I would like some conversation on it. And some of the language needs to change. People are not vocationally inadequate. That language I want changed. You may be vocational deprived, deficient, challenged, but inadequate is a demeaning kind of connotation. We're already socially adequate. We already know that. We're already aware of that. We don't need that kind of language reinforced within the documents. So I would like that changed. The other thing is that the third thing is that I'd also like to thank the probation department, because probation officer Echeverria, who was my probation officer, that dude is key. That dude is boss. He is the man. Because anytime that there was a social issue or something going on in my life, Soto, let's talk. Come on. And I don't want no bull out of you. Just let's talk.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much. Looking to anyone on the dais, I have some comments, but happy to hear from others. Public Defender Molly O'Neill.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. I just had a quick question about the supervision limit setting and also selective maintenance. Can you describe what that is?
Yeah, so first off, just to categorize we're going to categorize to the high, moderate, and low risk first, and then we're going to develop a supervision strategy from that point forward. So that's where you get your limit setting or selective intervention, treatment, or situational. So limit centers tend to have a much lengthier criminal history than someone who's a selective intervention client. The selective intervention is basically situational dependent. If you remove that one situation from the equation, you tend to not have the criminal activity associated with it. For example, like a domestic violence type of situation. If there was no family discourse that was present at that one particular moment in time, you wouldn't have had the criminal act. Whereas a limit center has a basically a criminal orientation towards committing crimes in their lives. It's a matter in which they feel is not causing harm to the community as a whole. So a lot of drug sales is typical in that, and kind of everything in that realm.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for asking that question. That was on my list too. I was a little confused about that. Could you talk just for a minute? I'm looking at, actually, I'm not sure what slide number it is, but it has the property crimes continue to be at the top of the offense of categories. And in 2018, it says drug, alcohol-related offenses. And I was wondering if you could just talk through what that broad band of reoffenses is.
And I think a key component to this is we do see that there was a change in 2019 in how we do deal with drug possession, right? So typically the DA's office has changed to multiple possession cases will result in a actual charging. So we do still see that substance abuse is a primary criminogenic need for our population. However, that is not directly tied to recidivism for the purposes of after 2019.
Which is why the categories are changed in the 2021.
I think that would be a good theory.
Okay. And then on the other crimes it's such a broad category. Could you talk just a minute about, again, the bandwidth of criminal activity you see there?
Yeah, as you mentioned, so other crimes, a large category. However, looking at the data, we have seen that there are like 3 or 4 categories that explains about almost 90% of other crimes, and those are these examples I provided. So for instance, driving with suspended license, delaying, obstructing peace officers, providing false information.
That's what you were saying in the presentation, and so are those in general, are those considered misdemeanors?
There could be a mixture on that because it could even be, felon in possession of a firearm, for example, falls into that category, right? But they represent such a small portion of the total, and we didn't want to overwhelm with just a slew of categories that are on that as well. So it does represent a very small proportion, but it doesn't necessarily specifically say misdemeanors or felonies of the like. So other crimes would just be any type of other crime.
And then could you talk for just a moment about the high percentage of women that have drug and alcohol, and I'm assuming it's addiction. It's not just entanglement. It's actually addiction in that category.
Yeah, when we talk about an AB 109 client, they generally have had just a very long period of time in the criminal justice system. But this is usually not their first engagement with the system. That's pretty well established. So we definitely see that the substance abuse that takes place with these clients is very long and very established multiple times in a rehabilitation facility, for example. A lot of in-custody treatment as well as out-of-custody treatment, especially when we talk about the MS population, which has a higher female group. We look at with the Sheriff's Office, with the CASU program, a number of our female clients engage with the CASU program and actually receive those services while they're transitioning towards mandatory supervision upon completion of that sentence. And they will still struggle with substance abuse even after that point. So it's a very deep-rooted issue for a lot of the female clients.
Part of what I'm trying to better understand is how our services in drug and alcohol related services do or don't connect properly with this subset of people. And part of the one thing I just want to say how much I appreciate is that you're using actual numbers. I find it very confusing that we use percentages, but when we're not using actual numbers, it's hard to understand how big the population is that we're talking about. And so what I'm really just trying to understand is what is the connection between our behavioral health department and the work that you're doing as, you know, in your role as probation officers, and given the number of these women, and I wouldn't know this, but maybe you do, the percentage of them that are moms?
Yeah, I wouldn't have the percentage off the top of my head. I'd say a large number would be mothers with that. You know, the role of the probation officer, because you do have a period of supervision, right? So we're generally going to do that referral to behavioral health and for our substance use providers to provide those services. They may be able to address the acute needs, but those needs may resurface later down the road, especially when we talk about a period of supervision. So it's important for the probation officer to stay engaged with that client throughout their time, and then recognize when there's other triggering events that do occur, and that they may need to re-engage in those services. So it's not just a one and done when we talk about substance use, especially for the female population.
So again, what I'm trying to understand is how available that service is for that person. And, you know, are your clients, you know, kind of, like there are some folks that I feel like we have an obligation to sort of push ahead of the line. One is foster kids, right? Like they don't have anybody advocating for them. They're our kids. It's our responsibility to make sure that if they have a toothache, we're getting them into the dentist's office. I feel that way about a lot of these. Let me just say, I think that I'm nervous that the female population of people that are in custody is going to will become larger as we see more and more addictive behaviors. And I'm mindful that for generations that wasn't the case. We're seeing more and more addiction in women, more violence in a number of areas. So what I'm really just trying to understand is when you have somebody that's within your custody that you're supervising, how's the other part of the system engaging that person so that they're prioritized? And I think particularly as we're talking about women with children, and I know the statistics about how many of them have been victims of domestic violence and sexual assault and all of that. So recognizing all of that, is that system actually supporting the folks that you're trying to bring out the other side?
Yeah, I think it's a two-way engagement also. We do need the client to want to engage in those services.
Absolutely, right, recognizing that, yes.
Absolutely, but we do have a great partnership with the Reentry Center, obviously the AB 109 that's been connected from the beginning. So when we can have that client, even if it's not in the beginning of their supervision period, if it's maybe later and they're having a triggering event and they're starting to struggle with substance use again, where we can re-refer and then communicate to those providers to say, well, we tried outpatient before. Now we want to move to a higher level of care because outpatient hasn't resulted in the longer lasting effects. We want to move to a sober living environment or a transitional housing unit, or move up to the residential category where they need that 30-day period where they are getting strict substance abuse and don't have to worry about some of the other triggering events that are taking place. But that communication is key, where we provide that information so they can, the provider can then increase their level to them.
So that puts you in the role of advocate for that patient, or that you're...
Oftentimes, yeah.
And they're getting the services they need.
I think so.
I mean, let me just say, I'm mindful that I'm not trying to have one department call out another department. That's really not what I'm asking. What I'm really trying to understand is, given that for a lot of the folks that we're dealing with, they're very impulsive. There's a lot of issues that are around that. So when someone's ready to get into the system, on a couple Tuesdays ago, we just had a conversation about talking about whether or not we had the services that we need in these specific areas. And so I'm really just leaning in to say, if that's not happening, it's not a blame thing even for behavioral health. It's really a question because you all are doing such a good job trying to keep these rates low, but we're seeing my theory is we're seeing a relatively small group of people based on the whole population of the county of Santa Clara that are going through all of our systems. And part of the reason I think that's happening is that the way I look at the way a lot of our systems work is they're wheels that sometimes connect and sometimes don't, like the inside of a clock. And if the person gets lucky, they're, and I want to make sure that when a person's ready, that we're able to make sure they get handed to the right place. So if what you're saying is that when you've needed these services, they're available, then, and that being an advocate that they're able to get the services, that's really kind of the bulk of what I'm trying to understand. My experience from the calls we get to my office is that that is not the case. And I'm concerned about it, and I'm looking at this subpopulation, and I'm thinking about, we heard a comment yesterday in a meeting from one of our partners who was asking if we were getting deep enough with the people, and I was thinking, it's true that in some respects we have to get deep with those who are ready to get deep with, and so that's really what's prompting my question. So I'm not going to press you anymore. I feel like I put you in a spot, so I'll stop there and just say that if you are not getting that kind of support, we want to know, not because we want to be mad at somebody, we just want to fix it. That's why I'm asking. Here's my last question, and it's really not for you. Oh, Nick, did you want to, Chief? Sorry. No, I was going to go to a different topic.
I think the services are there, and certainly working through Javier's office with our adult clients, I think the question and that we're starting to look at is how long is it taking them to get the service? Mm-hmm. So there's a referral made. How long is it before they actually sit in front of someone and start that therapeutic engagement? And I think that's really what needs to be looked at. That's what we're looking at internally, because I think that there's reoffense that may happen and people start to lose control of what's going on in their life if services don't start for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. What is that length of time? Because it's important, especially for the folks coming out of jail. They're going to need immediate services. They don't need something getting to a probation officer 2 months later. Like, those need to start immediately. So I think looking at the system could certainly help in that endeavor.
That's exactly, that's really helpful, because the goal, I know, is to have an on-demand service that people can get help, especially when they're coming right out. Thank you. My last question, again, not for you, and Dr. Luna, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this because you've only been given this assignment relatively recently. When we do the behavioral health testing when people come in and they're booked, if someone's with us for an extended period of time, do they get a psychological analysis as well as an educational attainment analysis? Like, would we know? Again, this is from a discussion we had yesterday about the number of people that we have that have learning disabilities or have other disabilities that are incarcerated.
They actually do. We do have psychologists that, run a suite of services in our custody health, and so they will, if they're with us for long enough, they will have one and have a plan.
How long do they have to be with us before they get that analysis?
I would say that, we lean on the folks at the intake. If everybody gets a consult and a referral, and they are put in a queue, so it doesn't really depend on how long they're there. If we can get to them, we will see them. So everybody will get one.
I think that. What's that?
The longer they're with us, the higher the probability is that they'll get seen.
I was just going to add my understanding, but Rocio, please correct me if I'm wrong. So there's a psychiatric assessment at intake. There's also psychiatric assessments conducted if there's any identified need, either by custody staff or custody health staff during the term of their incarceration, to be seen sooner. And then in addition, that more regular, as available, additional psychiatric screening takes place as it can be done unless other more urgent needs of other inmates take priority. with the existing staff. I don't know the answer to your question about the educational attainment assessment and whether that's included, and so I wasn't sure the
Well,
answer to
part of
that.
the reason I'm asking that question is just that, again, we were learning yesterday about the number of people that we have in custody that have some brain trauma, executive function, and issues. And thank you. And I do recall that we were trying to make sure that we had more robust assessments, especially of children who are in juvenile, in our juvenile centers. But it does seem to me that if that's not a part of our current medical assessment, it is something we should consider, because I think if we're really thinking very deeply about how to have people not recidivate, identifying actually what they need more concretely, and those are really, really expensive tests to have out in the world. But we wouldn't necessarily be able to give a probation officer or even the person themselves the diagnostics that really help them understand what their needs are. So I would just put that on the list of something that should be thought about as we're redeveloping the internal health system. Because, and I also, just to say, Susan, that I don't know how many times you've heard that, okay, well, that's educational, it's not medical, it's, whatever I think we want to just say we don't care, and that the full assessment should be done so that the person has the roadmap to get out and stay out. So thank you. Thanks, Susan. That's all I had.
Did you want to add anything else?
I'm happy to provide more detail on how that process actually works and what we're doing. We are actually looking at strengthening both the intake process as well as the discharge process. This is one of those areas that we'll be looking at very closely.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and I recognize we're kind of in the middle of maybe, I don't know where we are there. Thank you.
We're almost always in the middle. It's a very, very big section. Thank you very much to the probation department and the researchers for the data and the analysis that was presented in the report. I thought it was transparent and comprehensive and insightful. The key, of course, is how we use the data, and will we use it to ensure that resource allocations across agencies are aligned with the trends that you have sunshined for us in the AB 109 probation population. I do have some substantive questions and comments about the report, but I first wanted to just draw our attention to language and how word choices can create or strengthen our biases. And I realize that a number of these terms are used broadly and they're not specific to your research or to this department, but they gave me pause. And as we're talking about culture shifts and focusing on rehabilitation and restoration reforms, I think our language and the presumptions that engenders should shift as well. The first example, I'll echo Paul Soto's comment about vocationally inadequate. I understand that we're talking about perhaps cognitive capacity, but that really just means that we haven't found the right job or the right placement. So inadequate, I think, is just not an acceptable term, and we ought to think about, if our interest is in reducing recidivism, we know that we want to help people be employed, and if we know that there are cognitive or executive functioning issues that may limit the options for employment, that's okay. We still have to recognize that we have to find out where on the spectrum they can have some employment. And we see, a variety of organizations. Hope Services comes to mind first, that provides vocational opportunities for people that may have cognitive capacities. So all of that to say, not loving the word inadequate. Similarly, criminogenic needs, of course, these are needs that need to be met in order to reduce recidivism, but they're really basic needs that the broader population has as well. And just that adjective of criminogenic continues to tie them even when they are on probation, leaving the system to a quality that separates them from the rest of us who may need those very same things. And the last example I'll give is really, there were a few top-line statements in the slides that I felt were, while the data was objective and outstanding, some of the top-line statements I felt were kind of pushing me to a particular interpretation. And one example that stood out was property crimes continue to be in the top offense categories. Okay, that could also have said other crimes have reduced in frequency, drug offenses have fallen off of the top 3 entirely. So there was a value judgment or subjective judgment made in that top line to say this is what we're going to highlight. And I'm not intending, again, to put you on the spot and explain to me why you use certain words. I just want to raise the awareness. We'll certainly continue to produce reports. All of us up here produce reports, and language matters, and I think helps our thinking as well as the optics and messaging that we are producing. So back to the actual report, I thought that those categories of needs were particularly informative for strategic planning purposes. Do you know, or do we have data to be able to compare the group of AB 109 individuals relative to the broader probation population? I would be surprised if the needs are different, but do we have data showing mirroring?
I don't think we have the exact data today for the purpose of this report. I think we can provide it at a later time. I will say that AB 109 has a much higher high-risk category.
Sure.
And moderate risk, where formal probation and other forms of adult supervision will be much higher in the moderate and low category. But I will say that I think that there is the service needs, the principal needs, definitely are going to have some similar trends.
Thank you. That's what I would suspect as well. And then and this isn't necessarily probation, but kind of asking more broadly, what processes do we have in place to make sure that our resources are invested in alignment with the needs that we're seeing through these analyses? And that might be a Greta question. It's not a Greta question. Javier.
In terms of services for the AB 109 population, any individual that comes to the Reentry Resource Center that is requesting, say, employment or education will get referred and connected. Going back to the question of Supervisor Chavez about whether they are actually getting enrolled, we could do a follow-up, especially with the women because at 3 o'clock today, probation is part of a women in custody case conferencing. We could pull out the women that we have on the list, the time of request for services and enrollment, and we could bring that information back.
Thank you. I think that's so important. The referrals are clearly the first step, but understanding that we may be reducing recidivism only for the folks that use the referrals and engage in the programs should give us kind of some fodder to think about how we really not just make referrals, but incent people to participate in the programs, and then, have some sort of check-in afterward that a program was completed and use those measurements rather than perhaps just the referrals.
And we could definitely pull that out. We have our referral tracking system that we track all the individual referrals. And one thing I also want to commend probation in terms of the recidivism rate, because the less people county send to state prison, the more funding the county receives in AB 109. And so in the last few years, probation has been sending less, or the county has been sending less people to state prison, which then has increased the growth allocation.
That's interesting.
It's basically that's the way that they tie AB 109 realignment
if
funding.
the court is the body that's
Well, the court and
making
probation,
the
all the
sentencing,
stakeholders.
right?
The
So
less
the-
people we send, the more revenue we receive.
The funding formula that was created back in 2012, when AB 109 came forward, it was based upon how many folks were being sent up to CDCR. And the formula was built upon the less people you sent, the more money they would send you based on your number of folks in the system. So the less you send, the more money you get for services for all the folks. And AB 109 funding initially was for the AB 109 clients, and we've
Right.
expanded that through reentry so that we're impacting the number of people that we send to CDCR in the state system, and that's everybody here that's at the table.
So the lower recidivism rate, less people going
Yes.
before the courts, less people we send.
That is really fascinating.
It's an interesting
And the
formula.
money can only be used for the remaining AB 109 population that's here, or we can use those funds
Well, and we
more
have used it.
broadly?
We have used the funds to fund the Reentry Resource Center.
Mm-hmm.
We fund different justice stakeholders here in certain areas that touch AB 109 clients and others to keep them from penetrating deeper into the system so that we have less folks going to the state system. So it really is that whole umbrella that the county has adopted that keeps folks from penetrating deeper into the system.
Thank you all for that. Sylvia?
Just as a follow-up question, I think the key issue that we have is, well, there's two. One is engagement, that we know is key to getting treatment and then reducing recidivism. And the other is, once you have an engaged client, are they really connected to the actual service? And so here, I think this data is really helpful for us as policymakers and leaders. But my question to Nick is, I guess, how is this data then being shared to the line staff? And how are we educating the line staff about the value that exists in identifying, these needs and ensuring that our probation officers have the skills and the tools to pursue these two issues, the engagement part and the connection to services part? Because I feel like the probation model, the probation supervision model, statewide, nationally, is moving more in a direction from not just supervising and monitoring, but in coaching and in empowering and in supporting. And that, my question is, where are we in that evolution in this practice?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think you heard earlier from an earlier comment about the impact that a probation officer can have in the contact, depending at any time during a situation where they make a phone call and say, let's have that conversation. So it is a role that is public safety, and at the same time it's social worker, not necessarily social worker, but the work that's being done, confidant, whatever it takes to help that client move forward in their journey with us. To your point earlier in the questions, we had our full data that we did here, that you're just seeing a snapshot of it, and we provided it to all the AB 109 probation officers, clerical, anyone who touches the AB 109, so that they can see, hey, look, the work that you're doing, these are the outcomes, so that we do make that connection. Because it's important that they understand that the work that they're doing does make an impact, and how that impact then impacts the clients that we serve. So we did do that for the whole entire AB 109 population of staff that contact the client. So we are heading that direction to make sure that there's certainly that contact and context, that the work that people do, there's a reason why you do it and the connection, and these are the outcomes that show it. Initially, this was a report done by the state, and I wanted to see, well, what are we doing in Santa Clara County? It's great to see state outcomes, but how are we doing? What is it that we're doing? Where are the areas that we need to focus on as far as gaps? And so we did our own internal dive using the same metrics that they used at the state so that we can kind of compare apples to apples.
Thank you. Molly?
Thank you. I just want to commend Santa Clara County, particularly Javier and Nick, for their work on AB 109. When it first passed in 2011, every county was given a lot of flexibility to spend the realigned money. So Jerry Brown actually came here, and we met with him to talk about kind of the philosophy behind it. But the idea was, whatever amount of money the state was spending on state prison prisoners, they were going to give that money to the county, and you all could decide how you wanted to spend it. So lots of particularly rural jurisdictions, took all the money and built more jail beds. Like, okay, we're not going to house them in state prison, we're going to house them in state prison in local county jails. We didn't do that. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings, and most of the money went to reentry services and for probation to provide a different kind of supervision of this population, and we see that it's worked. We have lower recidivism rates by a lot than state parole, and people are in their communities being supervised by people who understand the community. So I feel really proud of the way Santa Clara handled it and wanted to say it out loud.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that history.
The other takeaway, real quick, to me is highlighting the principal service needs and the increase in alcohol and drugs, specifically for women and how it's increased. But it's increased for both men and women from 2018 to 2021, which is very similar to our community and things that are going on as well. But being able to capture that, highlight that, allows us to create a case plan for the individuals on probation, say these are the principal service needs. If we can make an impact here, it will lower their recidivism rate.
So thank you for that, Nick. On slide 8 of the presentation, we saw that drug and alcohol-related offenses were among the top categories of offenses for which AB 109 clients were convicted in 2018, but those were no longer among the top offenses in 2021. Is that because there are fewer arrests?
Yeah,
for that?
I think it speaks to what Darren spoke earlier about the changes in the law and how we're charging folks these days.
But the personal
The principal service needs have actually have gone
service
up.
need is that-
Where it's an issue with almost 90% of our clients. They're just not maybe getting arrested and convicted for those offenses.
which
the drug and
really
alcohol
highlights the
offenses.
importance of
Really does.
intervening and treating.
It really does. And we talked about it yesterday as well, between substance use and the basic living needs, as we spoke about earlier, and housing needs. 50% of our clients who reoffend are homeless or having housing instability. So it's a county problem. We understand that, housing needs, but it directly impacts these clients for sure.
And what is the status of the money being used for reentry housing specifically? And what kind of housing is that?
I'd look to Javier for that.
So quickly on the housing, we have an allocation of one-time of 1.4 million for the entire reentry population, AB 109. That's for rapid rehousing and emergency housing program. However, we rely on all of our service navigators, our faith-based services, to identify sober living environments where they could then refer clients to access that services. Folks that are tracked to go through behavioral health treatment, they have a different track in terms of accessing housing through the behavioral health office supportive housing track.
What about permanent housing?
So the permanent housing, it's all through the continuum of office supportive
starting
housing.
through the continuum of care.
Not
Oh,
enough.
Okay, thank you all. Any other comments on this?
Just would add
thank
in
you.
closing that
In
this
closing.
this is a population that continues to come to us from CDCR. We average anywhere from 35 to 40 new clients every month that come to us from state prisons. And so it is a continuous, ongoing effort with our PRCS clients and our MS clients.
The folks that are coming to us from the state are coming specifically for probation. They're finishing their
Correct.
their
Yeah.
custody time.
Those clients that have been deemed eligible for PRCS, that probation supervisors, not parole.
So people then get off of probation. So is there sort of a stable number of people that you're always supervising, or?
Yes. What's our standard on supervision? 40 clients
Yeah,
per
typically
probation officer?
35 to 40 clients for every supervising probation officer caseload.
And it roughly stays the same, as you mentioned, as clients are getting off, clients coming in.
Right, but nothing declining.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for the discussion on this item. Would you like to move approval of the
Happy to move approval. Thank you.
report? Second?
Vice Chairperson Chavez,
Yes.
Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 6 is our 2024, thank you both again very much. Item 6 is our 2024 Ledge Policies, Public Safety and Justice Committee chapter. Welcome, David Campos.
Good morning, Chair Ellenberg, Vice Chair Chavez, David Campos, Deputy County Executive, and I'm here with Elaine Trent from the Office of Intergovernmental Relations. And we're here to present the amendments to the legislative policies, which are the policies that provide guidance on what positions, if any, the county can take relative to state and federal legislation. Those policies are divided by policy area based on the committees of the Board of Supervisors. And so I'm going to turn it over to Elaine, who has been doing the bulk of the work and getting the feedback from this department so that she can briefly describe the nature of the changes that are before you. And again, thank Elaine and all the departments in the area of public safety and justice that have given us their feedback. Elaine?
Good morning, Elaine Trent, Senior Management Analyst with the Intergovernmental Relations Office. Before you attaches the red line document for the public safety and justice. The edits to this chapter are technical and cleanup in nature, and I'm here to make notes of any recommended additions or deletions that the committee may have.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
All right. Supervisor Chavez, want to begin?
No, thank you. I'm gonna find, I lost my question.
Oh,
I'll come right
But
back to
just
me.
as I said, we do not. Paul Soto did raise his hand.
Let's hear our speaker, please.
All right, Paul, go ahead. We've asked you to unmute.
Thank you, Clerk, for doubling back on that. I forgot to raise my hand. This is this whole agenda is important. Thank you, Mr. Campos, for writing the proposals. I would like to see a more specific articulation of what you mean on page 1 of the general public safety policies. Number 7 states in a very general sense that you want to eliminate implicit racial bias within the criminal justice system. Many of your positions read like that. And so what that is it's an aspiration. It's not exactly like the institutionalization of a policy. And so what I'm looking for is a little bit more information that can inform that, so that when you're writing something like this, me as the public that examines these documents and knows exactly what that is going to look like extant in the community, because I'm connected to all of these systems and all my homeboys are connected to these systems. And so I know what it looks like. And there's going to be a disconnect when language, very like vague and ambiguous language is used like that, because it's an aspiration. It's not exactly something that can be concretely identified. Now, what I'm going to ask is that Supervisor Arenas has commissioned that report that is going to quantify the impacts of racialized, biased policies within the county overall. Now, that's going to be an incredibly important report to cross-reference with this work so that it can inform and augment the work that you've already been doing. There's my comment.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you. You've found your question.
Thank you. I did just have one question. When we prepare this, by the way, I thought it was very replete. It had a lot of really good, good direction in it. What I was missing was the courts, and I know they're a separate entity, but could you just talk a little bit about how we collaborated with the courts as it related to developing the list of needs?
If I may, through the chair, this document has been, in many respects, a historical document. It sort of provides the framework that the county has followed in terms of addressing of all these issues. For some reason, at some point, it was decided that the courts would not be included in this section. So we have followed, the existing structure without any amendments being recommended. We do communicate with the courts to see if there are specific issues that they have that the county needs to address. The one thing that I would say is that IGR is undertaking a more comprehensive review of this document with the idea that, next year we will come back with more changes, if you will, because there hasn't been that comprehensive review in quite some time. The review has been on an annual basis, which is obviously important to guide our work, for a given year. But we do believe that a more comprehensive view of not only the specific sections, but also any missing pieces or maybe restructuring where pieces are. So if the board believes that that piece involving courts should be a part of this section, which is actually something that we have thought about, we certainly will consider bringing that when that comprehensive review is brought back to the board. And just one note that these policies are necessarily general, so that they provide a general guidance so that we don't have to come back to the board on a specific policy recommendation, so that's why they're not very specific. They provide that general guidance.
Yes, the reason, and I won't put our court on the spot exactly, but, just as we've been talking about backlogs and what the courts need, and we're such a part of a single system, and frankly, I think we have an opportunity, both with this governor, but maybe even future governors, seeing this system as a different, having a different role. And I think as we look at care court and a number of other issues, that if we, the county, have invested some resources in the courts because the state hasn't, and still the courts are underfunded. So, which impacts all of the work that we're all doing. So I would just like to recommend that we do that. Maybe not even wait, but look at whatever the courts are producing and adopt, give the board the option of adopting those areas where we think there's significant overlap as we get into the next session.
We will come back to the board in January for an adoption of the entire document. So we're happy to get feedback from the courts before that so that we can try to incorporate that when we come back in January.
Thank you.
Judge McGowan.
Vice Chair Chavez, I'm here so that you can put the court on the spot. So I encourage you to please ask early and often. The court is a separate entity, as we all know, funded by the state. But if there's one thing the court is familiar with and is represented by this group here today, we are very familiar with an adversarial process where the parties still at some point want to work together for the same goals. So on behalf of the court, I would certainly volunteer to participate with the county in the drafting and revision of this document.
And if I may,
Thank
through the
you.
chair, I wanted to point out that on page 3, item 5 does address the issue of the courts and the need for funding to address their constitutional responsibilities. But again, that is just one item. And it seems like what we're hearing is that you want a separate section that actually provides more robust language on that
I
point.
think what we want to do at a state level, and I know Supervisor Ellenberg is, leading at CSAC. I think we just want to demonstrate that we understand we have a system, and by them not having a heading, we're saying we recognize we're part of a system here, and we want the system to work better. And in order for that to happen, we need to collaborate both at a local level and a state level. And I think. And I would, be interested in the president's thoughts on that.
Thank you. I would very much second that. So let's have that be a motion to consider. It should certainly be under the public safety and justice piece, but just as we are, calling out other departments, I think that it's very much really in our own interest to support the court's advocacy. It would be equally important that we do not get out ahead of them or do anything that is not something that they are advocating for. And I know we certainly do have some experience in supporting their efforts, particularly around the Family Justice Center, getting that paid off. But I think that the opportunity and Judge McGowan's openness to collaborating and have us elevate their voice, I think, is very mutually beneficial. So, yay. I have just a couple of questions. The AB 109 policy that incentivizes us not to send folks to state prison is actually on our list of things, but I'm not clear, and this might be a more general question, but if policies are already in place, such as that AB 109 policy, why are they on our advocacy list? Could they be left over, or is there value in continuing to be advocates for rules that are already in place?
And if I may, through the chair, Madam President, the policies reflect sort of past decisions that were made in terms of what is included. That's one of the questions that we have, is whether or not something that already reflects an existing policy should remain. And so that's one of the things that we will be looking at in terms of this review going forward. And, you know, we certainly welcome any feedback, you know, that the board has in terms of the need to leave something that's already covered or not. And in the end, this is your document that reflects your policies, your positions. Some of the language, by the way, is outdated and has not been revisited for quite some time, which is why we're, you know, engaging in that review, a more comprehensive review.
Thank you, and thank you for hearing those comments with regard to the previous item. Just two other comments. One is just a grant suggestion, if we're not already on it, as we're expanding our preventative approaches to public safety through efforts such as Supervisor Chavez and Lee's hate crime prevention referral and the work that's being led by the Public Health Department following the cost of gun violence study. I want to make sure that we're pursuing funding through the California Violence Intervention and Prevention Program, which offers grants to local jurisdictions and programs. So if that's not something we're already looking at, I want to recommend that we include in our ledge policies support for the continued funding of that program, as well as our own opportunities to be looking into grants. Second, under the district attorney section, there's a policy requesting that we advocate for a legal limit for THC in blood to be established, which would allow an individual to be found guilty of a misdemeanor DUI. I understand the sentiment there. My staff reviewed current research on the issue, including a report from the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, and their assessment is that current science has not yet established a concentration level of THC that would allow, the quote is, that would allow reliable prediction of impairment the same way it does for alcohol. And a study was just launched this year by the DMV, California Highway Patrol, and UC San Diego to test various methods of detecting cannabis-impaired driving. So I would like us to pause there and allow the research around a legal limit to be further developed before we start advocating for one to be established that could really have significant consequences on people's lives and potential criminal records.
If I may, Madam President, is your intention to remove that item for the time being, then, to amend it to remove that?
Or to hold it, to not advocate until there's the more definitive science, is my recommendation, yes.
May I, just on that issue? So I probably am one of the last people in elected office who still opposes us having legalized marijuana, and part of the reason for that is that because we didn't have that number beforehand, like what is the impairment level and all that, and appropriate tests and how long marijuana stays in the body and all of those things. One concern I have about just removing it is that what I would recommend is, instead of removing it, we want to encourage that studying to go on, and maybe even for investments, and maybe even for pilot programs. Because what I do worry about is that what we're seeing now, especially as we're seeing people who are who are dying from overdoses, that we're not seeing just one sort of drug use, we're seeing many, many drug uses, and I think this is part of us being proactive, both in terms of helping people, because I think that the concentration of marijuana is higher now, and I worry that it is actually maybe addictive, and we don't even know that. So rather than removing it, I'd be
clear,
comfortable-
I wasn't asking for removal, and I hope that was clear. It was just a pause, because I think if we literally remove it, it might be forgotten, but a pause on advocacy until we see
Well,
these.
then, what I would say, the advocacy should be for the studies to be complete and be urgently done, and that we look if we can be a pilot program for that, for any kind of studies, because I worry, I'm actually glad to hear, I didn't realize there were these studies going on, but I'm nervous that it's getting a little kicked down the road and that it's not seen with the same amount of urgency, and I'm worried about fatalities and injuries, and looking at the campaigns for zero.
Traffic.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry,
She's
we're
just been.
today.
We're finishing each
Is
other's
it?
sentences. But if we could, I want to stay in the advocacy realm, not in the pause realm, at least on the studying part of it.
I'm absolutely fine with and supportive
you.
of that. Thank you. Are there other comments on this item? Any other ledge issues? We had a motion by Chavez, a second by Ellenberg. Let's vote on this item.
Vice Chair Chavez?
Yes.
Chair Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 8 is the
Thank you.
sheriff, and thank you, David and Elaine. Item 8 is the Sheriff's Office training report. You'll tell me when I'm wrong. That's not what you were thinking. I'm sorry? Nope, we did not. My apologies. We are doing item 7. Scrolled too quickly. Sheriff's Office Semi-Annual Academy Recruitment and Staffing Report. My apologies. My apologies. Good morning.
Morning, Chair Ellenberg, Vice Chair Chavez. My name is Jeff Puente. I'm the captain of the Personnel Division at the Sheriff's Office. With me today is Backgrounds and Recruiting Unit Supervisor Sergeant Chris Blancarte and Program Manager 2 Laura McCabe to help us out. We're here to provide our semi-annual report on the recruitment and staffing efforts at the Sheriff's Office. I'm excited to share a couple things that have happened since we last met, such as our 2 largest academies. Last Thursday, we welcomed 23 new Sheriff's Correctional Deputies who graduated from Adult Custody Academy 29. And we currently have all 24 cadets who are in the Enforcement Academy number 32. We've also taken steps to streamline and improve our background process with collaboration with ESA to onboard applicants before they were deciding to go elsewhere. We have a short presentation we're happy to share, or we will answer questions if you have them.
Happy for you to go through the brief presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning, Chair Ellenberg and Vice Chair Cindy Chavez.
She can hear you.
And distinguished members of the board. My name is Chris Blancarte. I am the sergeant of our recruitment and staffing unit. So I'm going to be sharing this PowerPoint today. Just real quick, there have been challenges in law enforcement with regard to recruitment and retention, and that sentiment would be echoed with law enforcement agencies throughout the country. But despite the challenges, we have a dedicated team of recruiters who are committed to developing ways to captivate prospective applicants, and they do that every weekend, so I applaud their efforts. But additionally, we also have a team of well-established background investigators who've been there for a few years And as such, they've really developed somewhat of a mentorship program within our unit, and it goes beyond just the background process, which you're aware is very lengthy. It goes well into their training, and then even after training through probation. So we're really trying to develop a way to support those that we bring on board. So next slide. Actually, can you go back one more, Laura, please? Thank you. So right here, this bar chart highlights our agility test from May to October. And if you go to the far right, the total, you see there were 631 total applicants who've applied. Of the 631, 373 actually tested. And of the 373 that tested, 237 passed the test, which is passed both testing processes. That's the physical agility and the written test. That's approximately 38% who actually, those who applied to those who passed both testing processes. So that's a really low number. With that stated, the quality is still there, and we're getting applicants to fill our academies. As Captain Puente mentioned, we had full academies, the largest since the COVID pandemic. We had 27 in the custody academy and 24 in our enforcement academy. Next slide, please. So as of November 6th, we've had 40 enforcement applicants and 6 lateral applicants in our hiring process, and 62 correctional applicants, 3 correctional lateral applicants in the hiring process. Which is actually a really good number when compared to our 2020 numbers. But what has helped, this is what I want to highlight, what has really helped us in this process is our collaboration with ESA. So we have an ongoing strike team meeting with ESA weekly or bi-weekly, and that's really coming up with ways to streamline our background process. And not only to streamline the background process, but engage with applicants from the get-go. In addition to collaborating with ESA, we've also acquired new background software. It's ESOF, and that has greatly expedited our background process from a 6 to 9 month process to a 3 to 6 month process. So it's actually shown to be very, very efficient. In addition to that, we recently acquired the National Testing Network. ESA actually acquired the National Testing Network. It's an online platform, so applicants no longer have to take the physical agility at our academy on the weekends. They actually could take the test at the convenience of their own home, or they could participate at a satellite site, such as South Bay Regional Academy, where they offer proctoring for the National Testing Network test. We started this in October. It has greatly increased the numbers of applicants who have actually participated in the testing process. I think it increases their commitment because of the online platform. They actually pay for the test, so our numbers are actually higher right now, which is bizarre, but we're gathering more data to report on that in the future. Next slide. So this slide highlights our past academies and our current academies. ACA 29 graduated on December 7th. We had 23 graduated. We conducted their post-orientation last week. They're very, very excited and ready to embark on their new career here with the Sheriff's Office. SCC 32, which is our enforcement academy, is currently having their midterm inspections today. We started with 24, and we still have 24, so we're really excited about that. It's a huge accomplishment. And then our future academies, ACA 30 begins January 16th. And we're looking at over 20 cadets for that academy. SCC 33 will begin April 15th, which is our enforcement academy. Next slide, please. So recruitment challenges, these are challenges nationally, but within the state, new laws such as Senate Bill 2, AB 2188, which you roughly touched on, which is legalizing marijuana, and other new mandated laws from the California Commission's post and just state law in general have definitely made the hiring process much more difficult and involved. There are just several more documents required of the applicant. With that stated, as I mentioned earlier, background investigators are serving as mentors and really taking the time to walk these applicants through our background process. The local competition is obviously a huge challenge. You have wages locally that are a lot higher than ours. So unfortunately, we do lose applicants to competing agencies. Our salaries and benefits are very good, but with that stated, you compare us to Santa Clara PD, which is probably the highest paid agency in this county. Their police officer salary is equivalent to our lieutenant's salary. And there's just a general lack of interest in the profession overall. I recently conducted a study, and that study incorporated, we're losing a lot of our baby boomer generation now, and we're starting to see a vast majority of Generation Z and millennials. There's limited research on Generation Z folks, but the millennial cohorts are outgoing. They're seeking constant feedback. And as such, they want to seek that constant feedback, not only in the background process, but beyond. So trying to find a way to captivate that cohort is, I think, the direction that we're trying to head moving forward. Next slide, please. So this slide right here highlights from 2012 to present, those who have applied and those who were actually hired. So you'll see in 2014, there were 3,193 people who applied. That same year, there were 33 hired. Fast forward to 2023, we've had 392 applied, but 29 hired, so significantly less, but the number is relatively close and the same. Go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So this is the statistics for our custody bureau, and you can see the same downward trend from, I would say, 2014 to present. Granted, 2017 was an outlier, but what I really want to highlight, in 2020, there was a hiring freeze. So as we navigate our way through the current hiring freeze, we do not want what occurred in 2020 to happen in 2023. The result was devastating as our numbers quickly dwindled. So we are slowly but surely making progress, but it has taken a great amount of time and effort to get where we are today to develop a constant pipeline of applicants. So it's imperative that we work together through this current hiring freeze to ensure that we do not lose our applicant numbers as we did in the past. Next slide.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Let's go first to the public. Do we have public speakers on this item?
We do have one public speaker, Paul Soto. We've asked you to unmute.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. Thank you, Sergeant Barnhart. I don't believe that I've occupied this space with you before, so it's a pleasure to hear your report. I was very encouraged by the numbers of applicants to the numbers of hires. This is probably the only area where I'd like to see that kind of disparity. You have 705 applicants and only 40 hires. And so what that tells me is that the vetting process is comprehensive. And we need that, because even of that small percentage of that cohort, that you still have people that are coming in and getting acculturated in a system that is sadistic and racist by its nature and dehumanizes by its nature. This isn't calling out anything. We as a society has created this system. So we as a society are going to be responsible for amending it. And what I'd like to see, and I'm serious about this, I'm going to contact you and see if there's some point where we can collaborate on this, is that I would like to have the Stanford experiment, some kind of curriculum installed within the cadets academies that specifically has a unit and talks about and articulates very specifically from a psychological, sociological perspective on what it is that the Stanford experiment was doing, what it accomplished, and what can happen to the guard himself when he is placed in this context. And it was very clearly outlined in the basement of Stanford University when Philip Zimbardo conducted that experiment. And he's still on staff at Stanford University. So I'd like to talk with you about that.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the dais? Thank you very much for the report.
Just briefly,
Sure.
if I may, I just really want to commend the captain and the sergeant that have overseen our hiring since I came into the organization, because they did have really a remarkable goal of trying to get the academies filled again. And when we really started looking at our processes and how we went about recruiting, they've done a phenomenal job streamlining the hiring process. And to the sergeant's point, and really to our earlier comment from the probation chief, that engagement piece has become so critical for us to get connected to the applicant very, very early on. And they've done a phenomenal job of that outreach and really helping the applicant, because it is a daunting process, getting through the process all the way to the day they start the academy. So kudos to both of you, and thank you for everything you do for us.
Supervisor Chavez.
Yes, I wanted to just say the same thing and really appreciate you calling out the partnership with the SA and the continued redevelopment of the best way to recruit and retain really good staff. And first of all, this was actually an excellent report. My questions were answered really from reviewing it. But two things I wanted to better just understand your thinking around. And one is, when you look at that horizon of people who are going to be retiring, it's such a significant number. And I know we've made changes at the board level in terms of being able to hire laterals and making some incentives. But I'm wondering if how you're thinking about, and maybe Sheriff, this is for you, like how you're thinking about that delta, and whether or not what we're looking at is overtime, or if you're just going to be able to hire your way over that, what looks like it's going to be a pretty big chasm in your staffing.
Yeah, what's been actually pretty impressive is, yes, as we're seeing individuals retire out, a lot of individuals are literally coming back the following Monday as extra help. And we use them in our courts, we use them all throughout the organization. And I think that's a group we're really going to have to rely on, because a lot of them, as you know, because of the system, they retire relatively young, but they still want to contribute. So we're going to keep pushing for that, to get those individuals to come back and continue to support our efforts. But I do think, to the sergeant's point, we've got to really attract the younger generation to coming into this profession. And to do that, one of the things I think is really important for the younger generation coming in is they want to know there's opportunities for movement, different things. They want to learn and move, and they want to do it quickly. So again, it's having an organization that gives them that ability to move throughout the organization every few years, so they're not just stuck in one position, because they do seem to really crave the desire to learn and continue to grow throughout their career. So we're working on those.
Yeah, and one thing that I really appreciate you raising that, I would love to have a discussion in front of this committee at some point about your thinking on how we create career ladders throughout the organization. And I think, especially I was looking at, the ethnicities and the, in different, of sworn staff, that are in custody versus law enforcement, and thinking, oh, that's interesting, like how where people are going and why. Now, some of it is, I do know that family members will encourage other family members to come where they are, in that moment. I know we have a lot of legacies, but that is something I'd be really interested in understanding, because I think it's actually good for everybody's mental health as well, in terms of not getting burned out and really, loving what they do and seeing themselves as guardians. So I'm really excited about that. The one thing I didn't see in the report, and you may have this statistic already, or if I missed it, you just tell me what page. It won't, no shame there, is how we do on language capacity. So in addition to hiring somebody who's Asian, how many speakers do we have that are Vietnamese speaking or Spanish speaking or others? And I think in particular, I think about that relative, well, both for enforcement and custody, actually. Is that a statistic you have already?
Unfortunately, I do not have that statistic, but that's something I could obtain.
That would be great to know. That would be helpful for us in terms of how we're recruiting. And the last thing I just wanted to say in closing is I'm really excited to see that we're continuing to recruit women. I think that's amazing and important. And I've seen your folks out. I can't tell you at how many events talking to the community, and they're doing a lovely job representing the county.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I don't have questions. I appreciate the report, and I absolutely hear and understand the urgencies that you're facing. So we'll also look forward to hearing your strategies and continued thoughts around recruitment and retention. Thank you. So moved, seconded. Thank you.
Did we take comment on this?
Thank you. I do have speakers.
Oh, I didn't take public comment. I apologize. Yes, let's hear our
That's
speaker.
quite
of
all
course.
right. So I do have an in-person speaker, Sophie Yoon Sung.
Can you please stand at that podium? The microphone is built in.
Here? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to share my experience with our police and see what, explain my view why it's the recruiting is not attractive to the people. So I think I'm from Asian family background. So we never heard that there's an opportunity for the police recruitment. So I think that's maybe the language barrier. So, and in the Asian community, it was not advertised enough. So that's my personal opinion. Maybe it's just because I didn't see the ads. So the second thing is I think the media in the past has portrayed our police officers very negative, which I totally disagree. So, and I think what our police are doing, many of their time were spent on the trivial family quarrels. But that was classified as family violence, domestic violence, that took so much energy. If you go on next door, people are complaining about our police officer, which I know that they have to do the job to take, if husband and wife were quarreling, if somebody called 911, they have to take one, put them into prison. It will cause a whole lot of troubles. So people are complaining. So if you go on next door, you will hear so many complaining about our police officer, while our police had no way to explain what happened. So I think there's media and there's police officer and the district attorney, but all the blame are put on our police officer. So that's one thing that caused people have negative opinion of our police officers operating. They call it ineffective. They blame all this crime rates on our police not doing the job. So that's my overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should do something.
And we have one online speaker, Paul Soto. We've asked you to unmute.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I guess this would have been a more appropriate place to talk about implementing change, a paradigm shift in how you train your deputies. Now, respectfully, Sheriff Johnson, mindfulness is not going to work with a sadist. It's just not going to work. Your philosophy that you talked about when you gave a presentation at La Raza Roundtable, the one where I was in attendance at, I heard you clearly, and I appreciate your commitment to having certain tactics adopted by your officers. However, the population, though, that I'm talking about is immune to that. They're literally immune, and it's okay to say that. We need to talk about that. You see, because we haven't had the opportunity to talk about what really goes on in that jail. Now, you know for a fact what goes on in there, and I know for a fact what goes on in there. The difference between you and I is that you have the power to deny it. I have to live with it. In fact, I've had to go to therapy for it. And so there's a very clear disconnect in terms of what we define as reality and the experience that goes on in that jail. Now, what is objectively a fact is that that Stanford experiment needs to be instituted within this context. And I'm hoping that I can appeal to your sincerity of protecting the people that are in your charge, and not just your deputies, but the vulnerable citizens that are in your custody when we're in that jail, to protect us. And one of the ways.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Vice Chair Chavez?
Yes.
Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is the Sheriff's Office Training Report, and I'm going to ask if it works for my colleague. Are you okay to go right to questions, just looking at our
Absolutely.
remaining items? All right. So thank you in advance for that. And do you have, or anyone else on the dais have questions on the Sheriff's Office Training Report? Supervisor Chavez.
I just have, first of all, I wanted to just say, we've given you an untenable amount of trainings to put people through, and I know that's been really, really challenging. One of the things that I was really excited to see is that the just how much of the training you've gotten through. It's actually been kind of remarkable, actually, because I know being understaffed, being able to put people through that training and is just really kind of overwhelming. One thing I wanted to ask, and this may be something that is that we don't know the answer to yet, but I'm interested in understanding if you can see any ties to the training implementation and then, you know, frankly, some of the issues that folks like Paul raise in terms of improvements in the level of concerns or complaints or any of those things, or do you feel like that's going to be over a longer period of time with more engagement and more training? And I'm going to ask the sheriff. Thanks.
Well, I have a limited experience, obviously, because I've only, well, actually, this marks my 1-year anniversary with the organization.
Happy anniversary.
So now that I say that, but so there is that limited perspective because I wasn't part of the organization prior to the implementation of some of this training. But what I have seen as an outcome, whether it's directly connected or not, is just a continuous level of professionalism. Yes, we have things that occur, but when they do, and we look at them and review them, whether it's through the body cameras, footage, the video, I see nothing but professionalism and a really concerted effort to de-escalate situations as best they can during that incident. So with that, I've been extremely impressed. So I do think that the training that's been given to this organization around use of force, all the other things that we're doing, especially crisis intervention training, especially the work in the correctional facilities, is paying dividends.
One thing that I would be interested in understanding, and again, maybe not for today, but just something for you all to think about, I am interested in understanding over what number of years, how would we assess the value add of the specific training? And I just want to give you an example that has nothing to do with what you're doing, but I think the DA and I and others have had a number of conversations over the 52-week mandatory domestic violence I don't even know what it's called because it's supposed to be therapeutic, but we have no evidence that it works, none, zero zip, and we still make people do it. And so one of the things I'd be really interested in understanding is the trainings you think are really effective and those that you don't, and what's the tool for weeding them out, and what are the metrics that would allow you to do that? And I know that's a hard question because there's so many other factors that play in, but I think we should be iterating these as we see needs and be able to be as responsive as we can, especially because it's all under one department. And again, I don't have a solution to that. It's really just a request for you all to give some thought to and then come back and help us understand how we can better evaluate these. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And that's a very good question. One of the challenges that we have as a division is state mandated or statutory requirements for training that are becoming more and more specific and don't necessarily allow us to be flexible as a county in providing the training that we want to provide. And that has definitely been a trend in the last few years, both on the custody and enforcement side. And that is something that we're consistently working on to try to find training that meets the best needs of our county, our deputies, and the challenges that we see based off of whether it be use of force or internal affairs or people leaving the agency, right? And trying to be reactive to maintain the retention and the resiliency that we're looking for here in the Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you.
I would extend to you the same engagement that we're interested in with the court in terms of state level advocacy. If I know that there's a sheriff's statewide organization as well. Sometimes there's coordination around specific items, particularly with CSAC. But if there are opportunities where it would be helpful and appropriate for our county to help advocate perhaps for flexibility around training or some other issues that aren't coming to my mind right now, please let me know, let our IGR team know, and let's see how we can be supportive to move things together. Okay. Do you want to make a motion to
Motion to receive the report.
Second?
Thank you.
I have no public speakers at this time. Vice Chair Chavez?
Yes.
Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We are returning to the top of the agenda. Item 4 is the SART kit testing update presented by District Attorney Jeff Rosen.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Ellenberg. I'll be very brief, particularly given the hour. We just wanted to inform this committee of the progress, tremendous progress we've made in reducing the turnaround time around testing SART kits. I know that several years ago, the state law is to have it done within 120 days. And remember, several years ago, we set a goal to try to do this in under 30 days, a very ambitious goal. But over the last 3 years, we've just continued to see improvement going from a turnaround time of 17 days to 14 days to now a little more than 12 days as the average turnaround time. And that, just want to stress, that's the average turnaround time for priority 1 cases where we have concerns about a serial rapist in an area. We're able to turn those around in a day or so. So just wanted to update that, and the Crime Lab did a number of different process changes to enable this fast turnaround. And essentially, one of the things they did was create a dedicated team to look at just SART kits, and then also have different analysts do different parts of the process. So basically, a multi-analyst approach to each of the SART kits has enabled us to drive the testing time down as low as it's been. So we just wanted to update you about that and answer any questions if there are any.
Do we have public speakers on this item?
We do. We have one.
I thought that was me.
We have one more. Paul Soto, we've asked you to unmute.
Unless DA would like us to limit him to 2 minutes as well.
No, I think I maybe did that in less than 2 minutes.
Go ahead, Mr. Soto.
If you gave me 5, Supervisor Ellenberg, I would be dangerous. 5 minutes? Oh my God. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I wanted to thank the advocacy that Supervisor Chavez gave to this issue. I remember watching the news and people being interviewed that were at these rallies and these media opportunities to talk about this. And I remember the look of surprise when we think about rape and the necessity to gather the evidence and to process the evidence in order to, get the person convicted that is responsible for this, allegedly, that the amount of time that it took to process this. And people just didn't know that it took that long. And that's consistent with the premise laid by Martin Luther King when he stated that justice delayed is justice denied. And so that was consistent with that. And so I saw what your office did, and it expedited and shortened that process so that justice delayed was no longer denied. That they worked in conjunction with the resourcing the district attorney's office. Secondly, is that it also provides the ability to explicate somebody that is accused of a particular crime. And the sooner that gets processed, and the sooner that there is a lack of evidence, this person can be released from jail because you possibly could have had the wrong person. And so it has a dual function when you speed up that process, because it could also release somebody from the jail system that really doesn't belong there and stay in jail any longer than has to be, than what is necessary.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. And yes, Supervisor Chavez and DA Rosen, this work really is tremendous, impressive. I certainly hope is a model for every county in the country. And just kudos.
I think we need to move that state legislation now to, fewer days. And I wanted to say to the district attorney and to the crime lab, there was some concern when I learned that there was a national benchmark for 30 days. I said, well, why don't we just do it in 15? I didn't understand all of the different complexities, and I could see Jeff and the other staff going pale, like we're not there yet. But the truth of the matter is you are, and it's really amazing work and very, we don't know how many people this saves from that same horrible crime. I had one question that I would be interested in getting your take on. The matches to CODIS, is that an average, would that look the same nationally as people upload data into CODIS for this kind of crime?
That's a good question. I can find out what other large counties' experience is, and we expect we gave you the numbers for all of 2021, all of 2022, but just half of 2023, and so the percentage of CODIS hits is a little lower for this first half of 2023, but we think that will increase when the year is finished. But I can certainly ask folks in the crime lab in my office to find out what the state or national averages are. Happy to.
And then just one other thing I wanted to share, Susan, with you and with all of you is that, when President Obama gave money to jurisdictions across the country to remove their backlog, that while many of them did do that, not all of them uploaded to CODIS.
Right.
And many of the largest counties that received money did not investigate the crimes afterwards. And so the reason I'm raising that is that I think it's incredibly important that we do raise the bar both in terms of testing and the uploading to CODIS, and for a number of reasons. And one of them goes back to a point you raised earlier about how to understand how people behave. And one of the things that I think, in the public realm, there's been a lot of emphasis on who a rapist is and what kinds of other crimes they commit. But one of the things that we've learned from using CODIS is that often rapists use crimes of opportunity, and one of the other things that they've been most committed for crimes, at least in the early literature as CODIS was getting more and more matches were made, was really for other kinds of crimes that weren't related to sex crimes at all. And so it doesn't match, sort of the what the popular conception is, and because of that, we don't address it properly. And so I think being able to better understand and get more and more agencies in the state to upload Dakotas more quickly, I think is something that I'm going to be very interested in us taking a look at how we can do something statewide, because I actually think it helps not just solve these horrific crimes, but also address other crimes that may be outstanding. So thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to move to accept the report?
I'm going to move to accept the report.
I will second it. Let's vote.
Vice Chair Chavez?
Yes.
Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 9 is for announcements, and though she left the room, I would like to announce a congratulations and gratitude for Martha Wapinski, who is retiring at the end of this month. This is her last PSJC meeting. We did make a proper fuss over her at the board meeting on Tuesday, but I wanted to be sure that all of you know, in case you want to reach out to her before she goes and make your own fuss. Are there other...
I was going to make the same fuss, so thank you for taking care of that. And also thanks to Martha for allowing us to fuss over her. She really didn't initially want any public presentation at the board meeting here or elsewhere, which is so Martha to be so humble and just focused on service and others. But I appreciate that she allowed us to honor and celebrate her 37 exceptional years of service to the county.
Thank you. Molly O'Neill.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I know it's late. I just wanted to mention that Stanford University's Hoover Institute is hosting a conference on collaborative state and local policy research, January 22nd, and our early representation work, our PAR team, is being recognized through Cal Berkeley's Computational Policy Lab, who did the metrics for us. And Supervisor Chavez, I want to thank you in particular for championing our work there. So we'll be present. Condoleezza Rice is kicking off the conference. The lab will be discussing how FTAs were reduced by 20% through this work. So thank you.
Wow. Congratulations.
PD
That really is
O'Neill,
exciting.
congratulations. Well
Yeah,
done to
that's
your
big.
team. Wow.
All right. Seeing
Let me
Judge
ask-
McGowan's light go on. Go
Well,
ahead.
no, have we released the dates for the next meetings for next year?
Yes. They are on today's agenda. They are
Okay.
on today's agenda.
Thank you. And I did want to announce that a collaboration between the county and the court for electronic minute orders begins training in January.
Yay. Another yay.
And it's a really big deal and going to have very significant positive impact downstream and throughout the criminal justice system. So thank you to the court for your partnership and for what this will mean for a lot of folks downstream and how much efficiency we may be able to create.
Thank you. Independent defender, Sylvia Perez.
I just wanted to let everybody know that there was a Supreme Court decision just issued this morning that will have a very significant impact on the length of delay for the incompetent to stand trial population. This was a case involving the Independent Defense Counsel Office attorney on a Independent Defense Counsel Office client. So it was heavily litigated, a lot of issues, but we think that that's going to have a significant impact in how we
Good
manage.
impact or negative impact?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, but the point of the decision is to really regulate the timelines and have specific parameters of the 2-year timeline that the statute has set forth. And so this is going to create a much more sort of rigorous expectation that the timeline is a 2-year timeline and that those cases need to be expedited. It's going to have an impact on, obviously, how the Department of State Hospitals handles our cases.
Oh, that really is interesting, too. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you all for a really fascinating series of conversations once again this morning. I'm adjourning this meeting. We will reconvene on Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 10 a.m. right here. Happy, safe, healthy holidays and Happy New Year.